Gentlemen, with no games, a lot of athletes are taking some time right now to look back at important moments of their careers. One of those is Jozy Altidore, who spent a couple years in the Premier League with Sunderland, and he had some interesting quotes about his time in the Premier League. Here's what he had to say, quote, "I just wasn't able to, as a person, deal with what I was going through as a person along with everything being a professional footballer in England entails. People know what you're doing. There are leaks when things are about to happen in your personal life, and I wasn't equipped to deal with that. It's sad because it was my dream move." Craig, you've played in the Premier League. You were a young guy trying to get your foot in that world. Do you have some sympathy here for what Jozy's saying? He was 24 when he made the move.
Yeah, it's not a young man, 24, these days. I'm slightly disappointed because when you led into that saying athletes, I thought you were just going to come to me and ask about, my career and, because I keep myself in such good shape, Herculez, I'm always working out. Yeah. But look, everyone's got a story is what I would say. And I don't know, Seb, do we know what he's actually touching on? Does any of you two boys know what he's touching on? Because I don't want to get too personal, but when he's putting it out there and saying, look, things in my personal life were not right, this affected my performance on the field, and this affected my day-to-day. Do we, without getting into too much detail, do we know what that was?
No,
we don't, but we do know that it affected his play. And I think effectively what I'm pointing at here is the relationship, again, with the English media kind of playing a role in a player's lack of success. You buying into that?
No, not at all. I mean, things are reported on whether we like them or not. As obviously as media now, that's one of the things. I personally don't get involved in reporting things, but I know you guys do and others do on the sports front. I look, he did well in Holland at AZ Alkmaar. He gave himself a platform, and ultimately it was a fail for him in England. The 42 appearances at Sunderland, 1 goal. I remember covering some of the games. Touch was bad. Didn't look fit. Didn't look comfortable. Didn't look as if he wanted to be there. So I can't answer these personal issues because it could be quite serious. It might have been serious for him. It might not. I don't know. All I know is you've got a job to do, right? And you're going to try and put these things behind you. As I say, everyone's got a story. Maybe it is also a case where he was at he was in the right league at the wrong time with the wrong club. And maybe the whole thing, when it fitted together, wasn't a particularly good fit.
Yeah, and you know what, Craig, what you said right now about the personal struggle, what he was going through, Seb conveniently left that part out of his quote because he speaks of this personal struggle that he was going through that made him ill-equipped to deal with the differences, to deal with everything that was going on in the Premier League. And you're right, Craig, we don't know what it was. We don't know the severity of it. So it's very hard for us to comment on it. I do know, and we see this all the time, and I've experienced it, I'm sure you guys have experienced it, when you're good outside of your work life, when outside of the work life, the personal life is good, the work life is going to be good more often than not. That's the way it is. We've seen it here in Major League Soccer, Seb. You're Carlos Vela. Carlos Vela talking about, I want to be happy. I want to feel good again. And look what happens when he does. He produces. Jozy Altidore was 24 years old, by no means a spring chicken, by no means a young kid, but he had never experienced the Premier League. And Craig's absolutely right. Maybe Jozy could have done well, but the circumstances, the environment he was in, for whatever reason, it didn't click. He's not the first player that didn't do well going into Premier League. He won't be the last. Knowing Jozy for as long as I've known him, and I've seen him evolve, the type of player Jozy Altidore was at 19 years old at a World Cup isn't the type of player he turned out to be. I mean, just physically, I can tell you, 19 years old, he thought he was Thierry Henry on the wings. He was going at players. He was turning players in World Cups. And now he's much more of a back to goal, number 9 post up, link up type of player. You evolve not only as a player, but as a person. And I think that personal struggle is what he was alluding to.
Craig, as a player, what kind of reputation did he leave behind in the Premier League?
One in tatters, really. Unfortunate for him because, the general public and the supporters and the paying public and also, I suppose, the media have no real... there might be some empathy out there, but let's be quite frank. They're only interested in what an individual does on the field. What is he helping my team? Is he doing his job? Is he the real deal? And unfortunately, that's what people remember. And the answer is a categoric no, and all those things. And look, do I think Altidore, do I think he's a guy who's going to be one of the best strikers in the Premier League? No. Do I think there have been worse strikers than Jozy Altidore that have scored more goals? Yes. And I do think he could have done a job. We just didn't see that. I think he's got all the attributes to do a decent job. Okay, he can work on his fitness, he can work on his touch, but he's powerful. He's big and strong. He knows where the goal is. And we could have seen a better Jozy Altidore. We wouldn't have seen a great Jozy Altidore in the Premier League, but we could have seen a better one. But ultimately, they're going to remember him as a guy who came in, and they're not interested in sob stories and personal problems. They're interested in it's a business. They're interested in what you provide and what you deliver. And unfortunately, at that period of his career in life, he wasn't able to deliver what the expectations were.
Herc, when you talk about Jozy Altidore, especially with U.S. men's national team fans, it definitely divides opinion.
It does.
Do you think he should still be starting for the U.S.?
Yeah, but it's not so much a question of Jozy Altidore. It's a question of the pool. Who else are you going to play? Think about who it was before Jozy Altidore. It was Bobby Wood. Are you going to give that mantle now to Josh Sargent, who at 19 years old does barely have a handful of games for the national team, a handful of professional games? I've heard of Bremen. It's more of an indictment of where the pool is than Jozy Altidore. And Jozy Altidore, I believe, is 30 years old. He's also by no means finished. He's the third leading goal scorer in the country's history. And this is CONCACAF. If you let him play these games, he's going to be the leading goal scorer in the national team's history. I do believe there's an evolution of Jozy Altidore, whether the common U.S. men's national team fan likes to admit it or not. And he's a player, for whatever reason, has been better later in his career with the national team than when he first started. Even though he exploded onto the scene, I still feel there's a lot to offer with this player. I've been with Jozy Altidore on the national team, with him at the club level. I've seen what he can do day in and day out. That strength that Craig talks about, that powerfulness, all these things, he just came into that. It wasn't like he always had that skill set. He has very, very soft feet for a big man. He's got a very good soccer brain, football brain on him. His IQ in the final third, his ability to combine. We've seen it with Jovinko when he was there in Toronto. I think he needs to be put in the right position for him to be a good player. But I think back then, that Premier League Jozy and maybe a Premier League Jozy today would be a much different thing.
Herc, let me try and play nice devil's advocate here, if I can. I don't know if I can do that. You mentioned Josh Sargent. Certainly there will be other young players. If Jozy Altidore continues to start and eat up those minutes, are you not risking hampering their development down the road and eventually finding the guy to replace Jozy?
With today's pool, we've given them every national team opportunity. They haven't earned it. There was 13 months where we were just putting kids out there and say, hey, go play. By the way, here's your U.S. men's national team cap. Craig can tell you how hard it was for him to play for the Scottish national team. I can tell you how difficult it was for me to play for the U.S. men's national team. You had to claw, bleed, fight for every national team cap, and nothing was guaranteed. It almost feels like we're giving these appearances away to these kids today. I'm not about that. You got to earn that position. And if I'm Jozy Altidore, I'm doing everything in my power, everything I can to keep that position. And if you want it, you've got to rip it away from my grip, from my dead hands, my dead cold body. That's when I will give it up.
All right, we'll see. Jozy Altidore, 2013 through 2015 with Sunderland, just one goal, but 40-plus goals with the U.S. men's national team.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.